Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. Before we start, just a few informations about what's gonna happen over the next few weeks. So in this episode we will talk about the behind the scenes / making of documentary of Percy Jackson. Next week we will have a season 1 recap / review. Then maybe we will have a special episode dedicated to some news that just got announced. For that later. Then I will take a break for 2 weeks. 3 weeks maybe, because podcasting is tiring, especially if you do everything yourself. But there will still be things happening on Instagram. But after that, we will continue bi-weekly because it's just easier for me, and we don't have a show that's coming out weekly I want to cover to be up to date with the rest of the fandom. And when I return, the first episode will probably be a Q&A with questions sent in by you. So until that, so probably until 1 or 1.5 weeks before the break is over, I'll be collecting Q&A questions from you on Instagram, via email, on the polls on Instagram and Spotify, or in the comments on YouTube, wherever you want to leave them. And after the Q&A episode, we will probably do either first book 1 or the movie and the musical. But I'm probably gonna start with book 1, then do movie 1 and musical, and then do book 2 and movie 2 and continue. I mean, after that we only have books left, so you know what I mean. Also, some news. Over on the Delphi Dispatches Instagram channel, I started uploading a few of my cosplay videos. I started cosplaying last year, and since a few weeks now, I'm part of an open OC tag dedicated to Demigod OCs, which means original characters. And yeah, if you have any questions regarding that, please ask them for either the Q&A stuff, or you can just send me a DM on Instagram. I'll be happy to talk about it. But now, let's just go into the news part, because by the time you're hearing this, you probably know the big news already, but we got a freaking season 2 announcement. Guys, you can't imagine how happy I am right now. Don't cry, Martina. Don't cry. I just came home from pub trivia, and I was like, do I want to record now, or do I want to record tomorrow morning? It's like, it's 10:30. I'll do it now. I sat down, put my recording stuff here, checked my notes I have, and suddenly my phone started blowing up. I'm like, what's going on? I checked, and it was like notification after notification after notification. Percy Jackson was officially renewed for season 2. I tell you, if it wasn't late in the evening and I didn't want to disturb my neighbors or flatmates, I would have screamed so loud. So I just screamed somewhat loud, and because I already had my podcast set up around and already my headphones off, and when I'm recording the podcast I can hear myself talk through my headphones as well, I kinda screamed my ears off. So if I'm loud today, I'm sorry. I can't hear anything right now. But okay, Martina, compose yourself. Since we just got the news, there are not a lot of official news publications who covered that. I mean, of course, comicbook.com, Liam already covered something, and I think Variety covered something, but I will do more news on that next episode when I do the season 1 recap. For now, everything I want to say about season 2 is what Rick posted, or at least it's under the official post on the Percy Instagram. There's this quote or this statement from Rick. I'm just gonna quote it or read it to you because I love it. I can't wait to bring the next season of Percy Jackson to Disney+. Raise anchors, hoist the mainsail, all hands on deck, demigods. We're heading for the sea of monsters. Guys, it's gonna be pirate themed, and who better? I mean, not themed, but it's gonna give pirate, and who better to make something pirate than the people working on Black Sails? I still have not watched it, but from what I hear it's perfect, and now I think it's on Netflix, so of course I will watch Black Sails next. I will compose myself now and talk about some other news I had already written down before we got this huge announcement, but yeah, I'm so happy. And I said I was gonna do some episode regarding some news I talked about. So it's season 2 episode. So I don't 100% know yet if I'm gonna do it before the break or after the break, but I will do a season 2 predictions, fan casts, things like that episode, because for the first time in forever, cue the Frozen soundtrack, I will be like covering things simultaneously as they're coming out. I mean, I did that with the show, but I mean like the news part and like what's happening with casting and filming and all that stuff. So I'm really, really looking forward to it and I'm so excited. Yeah, now I'm gonna try again to go into other news. I will come back to talking about season 2 probably more times in this episode. Some interviews. On the 2nd of February, there was an article published by comicbook.com by Liam Crowley, who talked to people responsible for the documentary we're going to talk about later. And it's really interesting because you don't get to hear a lot of like people working on behind the scenes stuff. I mean, at least I have never, and this was really interesting. They said that the footage that they used was mostly, or if not all, filmed like during production, of course, but it was filmed before they got hired to make the documentary out of it. So they had to like splice together the footage and make a cohesive narrative out of it. And I personally think they did an amazing job. More on that later. And also one thing they said, which makes sense, is they wish they had gotten their hands on the audition tapes of the trio, but they couldn't because while they were doing this, the SAG-AFTRA actors strike was going on, so of course they didn't, and we support the unions. Maybe we'll get the audition tapes some other way. On the 5th of February, the Direct interviewed Dior Goodjohn, who's playing Clarice, of course. We love her. And among other things, she talked about the Clarice and Selena potential romance thing. And all I will say about this is that she hinted very strongly to the Archilles and Patroclus mirroring. So just read the article, I love it. Speaking of Dior, she's releasing her debut single. At this moment of recording, we don't know what it's called or when it's coming out. So, I mean, this episode comes out on Monday, so probably when this comes out also we don't know yet, but go ahead and pre-save it. You can go to Dior's Instagram. There is a link to pre-save the single. And last normal news is from the Saturn Awards, which were last weekend. There, Keanu Reeves received the inaugural Lance Reddick Legacy Award and gave a really beautiful speech honoring Lance Reddick. I'm not very familiar in like things like these legacy awards or awards named after people and why you get them, but I know that since Lance Reddick was also part of the John Wick franchise and Keanu Reeves is John Wick and they work together a lot, this was probably the right option. And I don't know like what the criteria is to get this award. Maybe Walker could get it one day. Like I said, I don't know what the criteria is to get this award. For the Percy Jackson social highlights, I mean, nothing is bigger and greater than the season 2 announcement, but we have some other cool stuff, like another video about the cast on cast, where it was just about Toby Stephens. Fine, I guess. He gets a special treatment. I mean, he is great, but still. Like, the funny things that stuck out to me was, like, Walker talking about how good he smells. I mean, okay, interesting fact. And Leah says that he has like an automatic auto-tune in his voice. I'm not sure what she means by that. Does she mean his accent or I don't know. And we also got a bit of Walker doing a Poseidon / Toby Stephens impression. And there is like a longer or original video of it on the Instagram channel of Dan Shots. So check it out. I love it. I laughed my butt off. Then, since we had the Percy Was Here tour throughout the US, we got a video of like the different stops, like a compilation video which showcased how many demigods there are. So I hope we will get more of these opportunities in Europe. That would be amazing. Thank you. Then we had a video of Walker interviewing Adam Copeland. It is one of the funniest things I have seen in a while, so go check it out. There is also like a small bit of it in the documentary, but the longer version is on Instagram. Another thing that was released, this was released on Charlie's Instagram, and it is the Luke and Percy fighting scene where they were still training to the soundtrack of Pirates of the Caribbean. It looks so cool and they look so professional. I could watch this video over and over again. I mean, I did watch it over and over again, so it's great. And then, of course, we had the Demigod Diaries of episode 8. Mostly it was about the Ares fight, about Adam Copeland learning the fight, like the fight choreography in one day, and that everyone is just so stoked, especially like the boys. Everyone was so excited and stoked, and we got a lot of cool shots of them training and fighting, and it was just so cool, and the boys were so stoked. Then we got another video of moments on set. It was like just some random stuff, and I found it really nice. They went whale watching. Didn't see a lot of whales, but a lot of water. I mean, seems logical. Then we saw this picture of Walker with a fake beard, and I was like, that looks too real. I'm like, I don't like a 15-year-old with this full beard. I mean, at that point, I think he was still 14 or 13, but with like this full beard like a grown-up would have. It gave weird vibes. We also got a video from National Geographic where the trio went to Animal Kingdom to like celebrate the movie A Real Bug's Life that just came out or is coming out soon. There they learned to draw like this stick bug from the movie. I actually don't know the name, and it's been a while since I saw Bug's Life. And then they were asked if they would be like a bug or an insect, what they would be. Ariane said a caterpillar. Walker said a spider. He said some specific kinds of spiders, I don't remember. And Leah said although she doesn't like spiders, she would be either a spider or a butterfly, which I can see both. Then the Disney Plus UK Instagram channel also released another video, this time with Rick and Becky having afternoon tea, and they're so Percybeth in this video. I love it. And they talked about a lot of different things like ADHD and dyslexia representation is very important, and that it was unexpectedly the thing that made the story resonate with so many people. They also talked about how they were involved with the whole process from start to finish, and that Becky especially helped the art directors because Rick is apparently not a very visual person. I mean, he's an author, so I mean, not all authors are the same. They also said that the story doesn't just feel like a bedtime story anymore. It feels like great and epic. The last thing they were asked was what they were most excited for the fans to see, and they said Adam Copeland is Ares, which I was like, yep, I can totally understand it, and I agree, he's awesome. And lastly, let's talk about the Rotten Tomatoes scores. The average tomato meter is at 92%, and we're still certified fresh, with 55 fresh and 5 rotten reviews, and the average audience score is at 81, which is 4.2 stars out of 5 with over 2,500 reviews. So, I mean, of course they would renew it, but I mean, those numbers speak for themselves. Now let's go to Demigod Discussions and talk about the amazing masterpiece that is the Percy Jackson making of documentary, A Hero's Journey, the making of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is not going to be as detailed as the episode breakdowns. I would just recommend you to watch this documentary because there's so much heart in it, and I would not do it justice, and it is well worth it. It's like 50 minutes, and you get really a sense of how grand this all is. Some general things before we get started. I've seen them throughout this documentary. Some of the people are wearing like jackets or hats with the Percy Jackson logo. I mean, I know that it's kind of typical for at least bigger movie and TV sets to have those things, but I want those things as well. I mean, like a really nice winter jacket with Percy Jackson and the Olympians like embroidered on the chest or on a sleeve. That would be so amazing. Or like a snapback. I don't actually wear snapbacks, so maybe a beanie. Now let's see how it all begins. It starts out with people talking about the series as a whole, some amazing shots throughout the production, and Rick calls it epic because Greek. And this just shows how committed the creators and everyone involved was to make this show something special, and in my opinion, they succeeded at that. Then we see the title card, A Hero's Journey, the making of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It's in the same style as the Percy Jackson title card itself. And since there's no Y in like the main title, they just put the trident in the background. It looks amazing. And there's like also lightning going throughout the letters of the logo. I'm gonna be very interested in how they do all the designs for season 2. But we're not talking about season 2 yet. We're talking about the documentary. We start out like the main part starts out at New York Comic Con 2 months before the premiere. We hear a lot of voices like from the people at New York Comic Con, but also from the Percy Jackson panel. We get shots of fans dressed up as demigods, and I know there were like many Percy Jackson podcasters there as for the press or just in general, so I was looking like, do I recognize anyone? The only person I 100% knew who it was, like I recognized that person, is Robert from the Damn Meme page. If you do not know the Damn Meme page, are you actually a real Percy Jackson fan that is on social media? Just search the Damn Meme page. Robert, they do amazing stuff there. And also, by the way, Robert once reposted one of my like posts on Instagram. Thank you for that, Robert. If you're listening, you're great. Now, at the Percy Jackson panel, we hear everyone screaming very, very loud when Rick and Becky show up. I mean, I was also screaming. I was not in New York. I was at home on my couch watching the panel live, but it was great. We hear Dan Schatz talking about the importance of the books and how important a faithful adaptation is and how great it was having Rick there all alongside them. Our next stop, and for most of the part of the documentary, is Vancouver, 18 months to premiere. So probably June 2022 would fit. Now I have to say, Walker is so tiny. This was way before puberty hit him. We see the volume stage at Mammoth Studios, where they trio the camera tests, and Walker is just so excited, and Rick tells us why he needed to do this and why he wanted to be part of this. And he also gives us the history of how Percy Jackson was invented, which I think I talked about a bit in some of my other episodes. And Percy Jackson fans know it was originally just a bedtime story for Rick's son Haley. And then it got bigger and bigger. Now it's a bedtime story and just a story for us all to enjoy. They talked a bit about casting and that everyone has their own idea of how the characters look like. But for the showrunners, it was very important to find the soul of the character within the actors. Walker is Percy, proven by everything he does, like on and off screen. He gets like compliments from some of the adult actors, Clint Turman, who plays Chiron, and Virginia Cole, who plays Sally Jackson. Then Aaron talked about sending in his self-tape without much hope for landing anything, and now, I mean, he is the GOAT. And lastly, Leah talked about how she had to do many auditions as well, and you just see that the trio has perfect chemistry. If you've been following them online or in interviews, you just know these are friends in real life, not just on screen. Then we hear Andrew McElroy. I said his name when I talked about episode 7, I think, because he had a cameo there. I said his name wrong, so apologies. His name is not McElroy, it's McElroy. It's one word. And yeah, he's the acting coach on set. And he just talks about how great these kids were and that he wants to make the actor live in their roles, but make it their own at the same time. And the kids just love him. You hear it every time they talk about him. We know that every word they say on screen has some meaning, has an inflection, and they have a lot of books to draw on, but with the help of the acting coach, they can like access it and use it to their advantage. Next, they talked a bit about like the locations and especially the digital stuff, because every time you turn around, you're somewhere new. Figuring out how to travel across the USA and bring that to life, incorporated like physical and virtual locations. One of the key players in this was ILM, where the first volume stage in Canada was like built for this. And from what I saw, like it is the future. It looks so cool. And like many people who work on it tell us how great it is, and I can concur. It looks so freaking real, all of these things. It's like you're in the forest, on the beach, in the underworld, on Olympus, whatever. And I don't know how much like retouching they did on like the screens of the volume for the documentary, but I don't think they did a lot, because you see that you can't see actually. I don't know how to say it. It just looks awesome. It feels real, even through like the documentary lens. And someone who was also like that stunned by the volume stage as I was, it was Walker's dad. I like this guy. He gives off cool vibes. And the best thing that stood out to me on this part of what he said is that he calls Walker Walkman. I love it. Like, I love nicknames their parents give their kids, so long as they're not embarrassing. And I love that this man, who's in his 40s, gave his son the nickname Walkman, who probably has no idea what a Walkman is, or if he does, only because his dad called him that. I mean, I also just know a Walkman because it's funny and never used one. Yeah. Do people who listen to this know what a Walkman is? I don't know if I have that young of an audience. No. And people who are online know the memes. Okay, now back from the Walkman to the documentary, specifically the car crash from before the Minotaur fight. We see some behind the scenes of that because that was also in the volume stage, and there we see the Camaro on this 6-axis motion base that can like move everywhere, and it looks so cool. I'm gonna say cool a lot, I already know this. And one of the people working on there, they demonstrated with a small model how it works. And it was like shaking and rain, and it looks so intense, and it also feels very intense according to Arian, who was like in the back of the car getting flung around, drenched in rain. Then one day, Walker comes to set with a real trident. It looks like the one from Aquaman, so maybe it's like a prop, but apparently it's out of real metal, so it's dangerous. And that sparks like the conversation on how the props department made the weapons look real and made this fantastical world look real. And Rick talked about the props department making Riptide, that it had to be this amazing sword that came out of this really plain looking 30-cent ballpoint pen. But the cool thing is that they incorporated the shape of Riptide's blade in the guard of the cap of Riptide. If you look closely, I mean, you see that it's gold, but if you look closely, you see that it's actually the shape of Riptide as well. Next, we have scenes from Asphodel with the Asphodelians, and according to Arian, you don't know which ones are real and which ones are mannequins. I mean, I knew that there were real people because we had some close-ups in episode 7, but there were like random ones that were real, so they didn't know which ones were, and I get scared easily, so I would imagine that myself would just like almost run into one of them, apologize, and it turns out that it's actually not a real person, and then not apologize to a real person. I don't know if that just made sense what I said, but that's how I feel. Then we got Oscar-winning Dan Hanna on how they came up with the scenes, starting from concept art to people actually building the sets. And we get to see one set in particular, which is the set for episode 5, the chamber of where the golden throne is. Not the chamber of secrets, no, it's not Harry Potter. It's the chamber of the golden throne. And yeah, it's like a 32,000 cubic foot tank of water in there. And you see that they literally built that from the ground up. They also talked about finding the ideal location for Camp Half-Blood, which is in a forest by Langley, which is apparently just outside Vancouver. And they spent about 3 months actually building the camp. They brought in a lot of greens, so trees and bushes. They dug up the pond that you see near the cabins. And speaking of cabins, they built these cabins. Some are decked out more like interiorly, like the Poseidon one and the Hermes one. Others were just inserted via blue screen. And the others were like built just the outside, but they all look so amazing. Then we have Charlie, and he is like a big brother to everyone of the kids, and they just knew like Walker looks up to him, which is like the perfect dynamic we need for Percy and Luke. But speaking of Walker, we find out that he was a military brat, so they moved around a lot, and coming to set and having this camp had like the feeling of a family itself, and I really like that. I mean, one of my favorite movie tropes is found family, and you see that trope a lot in the Percy Jackson books, so I love it. Did I say movie trope? I mean book trope. We hear Dior talking about Clarice, who she is, what she represents, what it means for her to play Clarice, and all I can say is we love her. We love both Dior and Clarice. Speaking of people we love, Toby Stephens on Poseidon and Percy's relationship. It's really interesting what these actors have to say about their roles and their relationship with other people. From the god of the sea, we go under the sea. Actually, we go under a pool. We go underwater. We see how Walker learns to act underwater. And it is difficult. I mean, yeah, of course. I'll be happy if I can hold my breath for like 30 seconds. I used to be better. I think once I was like 1.5 minutes. Now I'm probably down to 30 seconds. But I love swimming. And no, I'm not a child of Poseidon. Swinging back from this side tangent, Walker in the pool. Yes. So they decided to shoot as much as possible practically, which means Walker was soaking wet most of the time. But how he learned to do like the underwater stuff is he started out with a freediving youth course, which according to his teachers, he passed with flying colors. And that shows again, Walker is Percy Jackson. And we got to see how they actually shot the Mississippi scene and that he was like underwater and stuff, and he stayed underwater, and there was like this diver who just brought him the, I think it's called a regulator, don't quote me on that. And I remember that Walker said in some interview that he stayed underwater up to like 1 hour, of course getting the air through the regulator. And another water scene we have is when Walker and Leah have to jump out of the boat in episode 5. And there we get Jed Wilkinson, who is the director of that episode, telling them that, yeah, they theoretically can do a second take. It would just take like hours in between to reset everything, let the kids dry off, and all of that. So they did that in one take, and everyone is very proud of them, me included. And I just love that the adults are real with the kid actors, because you don't have to talk down to them. It's a collaborative story here. We also get Leah's parents, Floyd and Leah Jeffries, on how much of a hard worker their daughter is and that she is a perfectionist. I love that just everyone was saying so much nice things about Leah, which actually made me tear up, because seeing a young girl in a role that inspires so many other young girls and women out there is just, it's heartwarming. And we also get to know, I mean, we already kind of knew that Leah is like Annabeth on and off sets, so again, perfect casting. We get a bit of info on the creature design and that it was hard to figure out how to make a figure that has been reimagined so many times specifically for this series that it was recognizable, but also stood out as, yeah, this is the Minotaur from Percy Jackson, this is the Chimera from Percy Jackson, and not just like any old Chimera or Minotaur. We saw a bit of more detail about this where they combined makeup and motion capture stuff, especially for Alecto and Medusa, and it looks really funny without the special effects where it's just the people in half of their bodies in makeup, the other part is in the motion capture suit. It looks really fun. And they also showed a bit more details on how they made the Minotaur, how they came up with it, and all that stuff surrounding that. Then we got to know about stunt work, and that Walker loves stunts, and he wants to do them as soon as he gets 18 by himself, of course, because regulations and safeguarding issues. But the people working on the stunts love that Walker always brings such enthusiasm when doing these things, and Walker's dad compares watching him do stunts to watching your child do some sports games. We see how they did the arch stunt where Percy falls out of the arch, and it looks really cool. Actually, I want to do that. It's like with these wires that they hold you and then they release you, but you're like falling in slow motion basically. And Walker looks so sick during this whole scene because it was, yeah, in storyline he was poisoned, so of course he looks sick. And I'm like, oh no, poor Walker. I could understand that because I think he said once that during that time they filmed like the Echidna episode, he was asked so many times if he's okay, if he needs like a chicken soup or anything to feel better, and now I can totally see why. Because this makeup looks just so freaking real. We also saw some behind the scenes stuff of the Cerberus chase where Arian had so much fun. He was talking about learning how to walk like a goat first and then do wire stunts as well. We see his mom talking about how much Arian loves being on set, and I always wonder if when I see the parents of child actors, how like their life looks like. Does one of the parents have to give up a job to help or like to accompany them? Because as far as I know, the parents have to be present with child actors because, of course, children. So yeah, I don't know how the industry works. Anyways, back to Arion and Cerberus. We see how he gets Cerberus slobber all over him, and Dan calls Arion the heart of the show. And this is just so sweet because we know, I think Rick was it, who said that Grover is the soul of our celestial trio. Like, Annabeth is the brains, Percy is the fighter, and Grover is the soul. And in real life, it's basically the same, that Arion is the heart. And Rick said that he was, and I quote, rolling on the floor laughing when he saw Arion's first tape. And I was like, did you just say raffle? Rick, did you just say raffle? But back to the nice things, he also said that Arion totally gets Grover's humor and adds to his personality, which is like so important that it's not just a one-on-one copy of what's in the books or the limited stuff we know from the books, because the books are from Percy's perspective. Percy doesn't know everything. He's an unreliable narrator. But apart from acting, the young actors need the support of their own personal ecosystem. And after a hard day at work, it is important to have somebody to go home to support you. And we get some set teachers talking about what goes on between scenes. Like Leah, at the point of filming, was in 8th grade, and she was just learning algebra, and she said her favorite subject is math. I mean, yeah, Leah, you are a wise girl, but math? Really? Not like history or anything that's interesting? Walker and Arion were making something for a physics project, and the teacher says that they incorporate the kids' interest into teaching the material. For example, Walker really likes the camera department, so they interrogated these things into the curriculum, and it's important that the kids can be kids on set as well as off set. For a short period, we cut back to Los Angeles, where we see Bear McCreary scoring the show with the Sparks and Shadows studio orchestra, and it looks really amazing. I have no idea about music. See, I don't know anything about the film industry or about music, so you're listening to the perfect person to talk about this stuff. But about the things he said, the thing that stood out the most to me was that the intimate scenes were actually the hardest ones to score, where you would think like fight scenes were very hard. Back in Canada, we go to the Lotus Casino set. The Lotus Casino is actually like built into an abandoned mall, and on the days of shooting there were about 400 people on set, and when Rick first entered it, he said he wanted to move in because it looked so great. And I can understand, because the Lotus Casino is a place you never want to go away from. And then the showrunners talked about, hey, who's your first choice for Hermes? They freaking got him. It's freaking Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's Alexander Hamilton. It's one of the greatest writers, show writers, playwrights of our time. And he genuinely seems so fun. We have this little part where Arion interviews him, and I love this perfect pairing because they both love musicals. And I mean, we know Arion wants to play Hermes in Hadestown, and he's sitting next to Lin-Manuel Miranda, famous for so many cool musicals, playing Hermes in Percy Jackson, so perfect pairing. And Lynn also talks about how he got to know about Greek mythology, because he didn't really know a lot about it before he read the books with his kids, which just reflects the experience a lot of other adult actors had on this show. And we have another one of these interview things where Walker interviews Adam Copeland. I talked about it in the news part because the full thing is on Instagram, and there we just have a little snippet of it in the documentary. But we see a bit more of the fighting between Adam and Walker, how they like trained for it, and also how they did it IRL. Well, you know what I mean with IRL. And Adam said it was kind of new for him to fight a teenager. Yeah, I mean, I would say same, but actually no. What I mean by that, I don't go around punching teenagers. I'm not that violent, but I have a nephew who is a teenager and we play fight sometimes. So Jacob, this one goes out to you. Be good. You're probably not listening to it because you're too lazy to listen to English stuff. I still love you. But back to the Ares fight, the last thing I wanted to say about this one is that it looks so amazing because it's also on the volume stage, and it just looks like you're on the beach of Montauk when they're fighting there. It looks so great. Then on one of the last few weeks of filming, it was Walker's 14th birthday, and I mean, he said his wish out loud, but it kind of came, well, we don't actually know if it came true, because his wish was for the next season to be a bit shorter. Hopefully he just means like in filming, not in runtime, because we want more of this runtime. And then we hear his parents just saying how happy they are for him, and his dad tells us when he wanted to start acting, and he kind of gets emotional panel saying, "You see a kid find the thing that he's supposed to do at such a young age. As an adult, I'm still looking for the thing I'm supposed to do." Same. I mean, yeah, I'm in my early 20s. I still have a lot of time, hopefully. So I also hope that I one day find the thing I'm supposed to do, like Walker already has, apparently. But yeah, his dad almost starts crying when he says, "To be here and to get to watch my son find this and who he's becoming has been the greatest gift I could ever ask for." And now is the part where I started crying again. And I did not stop until the end of this documentary. I really have to restrain myself from crying again because I'm getting teary-eyed again because it's feelings. Ugh. We get Andrew, the acting coach, again, and he said a bunch of things. I'm just gonna tell you what he said. "One of the things I really, really love about this project was it began with words on a page, and the words came to be on a page because a father was trying to help his son feel more comfortable in the world, which then became a script for a television series, which then became a greater place, a campfire, if you will, around which an incredibly talented group of people and an incredibly talented group of young actors came together to begin our hero's journey toward the making of Percy Jackson." Whew, that was a run-on sentence. We hear many people talking about what the story, the show itself means to them. Cast, we have crew, we have some extras from camp, like two little girls. They just ripped my heart out because it was so sweet. And then where I really started to bawl was Virginia Cole. And when she talked about why she took this job, she said it was because of a little boy named Liam. It's her godson. And when he found out that Virginia had auditioned for Percy Jackson, like they were walking down a street somewhere in New York, and he just stopped in his tracks and his eyes filled with tears of joy. And at that point, she knew that this was really, really important to people, and especially to someone she loves. And she wanted to be a part of the story that makes a child feel that way. Some more extras from camp were talking about what the book means to them and how it makes them feel, and all the representation about ADHD and dyslexia. And we end where we began, at New York Comic Con, with a voiceover of Rick saying, "It's really critical for me that viewers all over the world can look at this show and say, I could be Annabeth Chase, or Percy Jackson, or Grover, and to see you can be a hero no matter what you look like, no matter what your personal challenges are, no matter where you come from. What it's really about is tapping into the best that's inside us, drawing on that and doing what we know needs to be done in those hard moments, and hopefully getting to do what needs to be done with some great friends around you." Oh my gods. This documentary. I don't think I've ever cried at a documentary this hard, / rewatched it. I mean, of course I rewatched it for the podcast purposes, but I would rewatch this documentary multiple times, and I've never rewatched a documentary. I've rewatched a bunch of shows and movies I liked, but never a documentary. Not that I don't like documentaries, but yeah, I don't know. Just a few other thoughts and feelings that popped into my head during the watching of the documentary or writing down my notes. We see on the backdrop of one of the shots that the project name for Percy Jackson and the Olympians was Mink Golden. Now, like I said, I don't know a lot about the industry, but I know a little bit about project names. So project names are there for projects where either the name has not been finalized yet, or to disguise it from what it actually is for the public. So you can't just go around saying, yeah, we're shooting the next big Marvel movie, I don't know, Captain America 5, or in this case, Percy Jackson, so it's just called something random. Sometimes it has a meaning. I don't know if this has a special meaning or not. What I wish we had some behind the scenes footage of was seeing Grover getting horns and ears on in the makeup trailer. I think we saw a little bit about this in one of the BTS stuff on the social media accounts, but I would really like to have more of this. I also really liked seeing the stunt doubles of our trio. We didn't really get to see or meet a lot of them. We briefly met Vesh, who was the stunt double for Orion, and we also met is it Cassandra or Sandra? I don't remember. She's the stunt double for Percy / Walker. And I don't know if we got the name of Leah's stunt double. Probably somewhere online. But in general, I would love if we get one of these behind the scenes type of documentaries for every season coming up, because we have a season 2 confirmed, which also means we will get more seasons. I already know it. So I can already tell this is a shorter episode, but we still have 2 points on our agenda. Our penultimate point is, of course, the trivia trial questions. Let's see, what were our questions last week? Last week I asked you, first, what other upcoming project is Jed Wilkinson also a director on? Jed Wilkinson, as a reminder, was the director for episodes 5, 7, and 8, if I remember correctly. And she also directed some episodes, I don't know if she directed all of them, for the upcoming Avatar The Last Airbender reboot. Is it a reboot? I think it's a reboot. In any case, I will watch it, definitely. Now the second question was, since I was so fixated on Athena making a surprise appearance this season, which did not happen, what other goddess does the Athena Parthenos statue typically hold in her hand? It is Nike, the goddess of victory. Speaking of the Athena Parthenos, we meet her, of course, in the Percy Jackson sequel series, The Heroes of Olympus. I think Mark of Athena onwards, and there are actually real life versions of this. Now for today's questions. The first one is regarding one of the companies responsible for the great visual effects in the series. The company ILM was one of the responsible visual effects parties on Percy Jackson and the Olympians. What does ILM stand for? And the second question is something Dior mentioned. Dior talked about how Clarice and Selena mirror the story of Archilles and Patroclus in the upcoming books, especially in the last book. Who wrote the retelling of their story named The Song of Achilles? By the way, I'm reading it right now. I love it. I'm crying. And if you know what happens at the end, I mean, I also know what happens at the end. That's why I do not want to finish this book right now, because I will cry again. Now, our last point on our agenda today, of course, as always, my fave, mythical music. And I was thinking, we need a good song for this documentary. We didn't really have a song itself in the documentary. I mean, I wasn't expecting to, but I was thinking if we get like something that gives the feelings of this documentary. The first song that came to my mind was Viva la Vida by Coldplay. It just gives me the feels, like the same way this documentary gave me. If they would have put this song in there somewhere, I would have cried even more. It's like one of those songs, you know? It's one of those songs that gets you right in the feels, but in a good way. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast, and if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow at Delphi_dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This is Martina, signing off until next time, and remember, the real world is where the monsters are.